John Landon's being monitored for COVID, so he will not be presenting after me this morning.
Okay.
Oh.
Who's?
All right.
I'm sorry, Betty. I'm sorry.
Did the weeds reschedule there?
Yeah, it's rescheduled for next week, next Monday.
Okay.
Something out there to, sometimes that helps.
Yeah.
You guys got that same email?
From Lyndon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we ready?
Ready
It's
when you are.
July 13th, 2020, and ready to do the Shawnee County Department of Public Works budget hearing.
Yeah.
You're on.
Curt Niehaus, Director of Public Works. Good morning, Commissioners. Yep, here I'm going to do a second Public Works budget presentation. Last year was my first. And I'm not going to just talk about money. I'm going to talk about some other things because I think a budget in itself is of not much value. You've got to put a budget in perspective. So I'm going to talk about some other things first, and then we'll get into the budget, and we'll get into the capital improvement plan, 5 years. The most important thing I think that kind of sets us off on the right track is a mission statement. And really what it's all about is me, myself, the department. We want to provide the citizens of Shawnee County with a safe and cost-effective road, bridge, and drainage system by regularly, expeditiously, and I added that this year, and efficiently maintaining and enhancing the county's infrastructure assets. And I think we do a pretty good job as a whole on accomplishing that. My vision is obviously to give excellent value to the taxpayers of Shawnee County. I have talked to a number of other folks in government, and I can tell you with honesty that Shawnee County runs a pretty tight ship as far as public works go. In many ways, we have a skeleton crew. We're not management top heavy. More than approximately half, maybe more of our staff is out on the road regularly maintaining the roads. So I think that's something that the commission can be proud about, that we have a pretty efficient public works department. Obviously, we're always working to continuously to improve, whether it be how we do things, technology, materials. Sometimes those improvements are difficult, but we're always looking for ways to improve how we do things. I like to see Public Works Department, Shawnee County, as an example that other similar government entities can look to. And I think in many ways, Shawnee County is an example that other area counties aspire to. We have an excellent, throughout the county, our bridges overall are in excellent condition. Our roads are in pretty good condition. So I think that is something that we can be proud of. And I hope that we're adaptable. You know, I used to hear this all the time. Well, we've always done it this way. That to me is not an answer. I want to know, okay, why do we do it this way? Is there a better way to do it? Is there new technologies that we can use to do things differently? So those are kind of the vision. And then obviously we want to be responsive to the taxpayer. I think we do a pretty good job. Combined with the phone calls, see, click, fix, commission input, I think we do a great job of responding to the public. Okay, challenges. Obviously, I think it's important for everyone to know what are the things that might hinder our ability to be successful down the road. One of those things is workforce sustainability. This isn't anything new. I'll be surprised if this ever leaves my presentation. Right now, we have 9 vacancies in Public Works. We have a GIS position that's been vacant for almost a year. The previous individual in that position retired. We have a recent vacancy, a bridge department supervisor who was dismissed. And then we have 7 vacancies in our road and bridge maintenance department. So I think it's important that whenever possible, we accomplish these salary studies. We make our salaries competitive. We do everything we can to make employment in Shawnee County a positive and something that people look to. Right now, to be honest with you, with the present COVID situation, I'm surprised we're not getting more applications. We're hiring. We have jobs. And until the commission tells me that I can't fill some of those positions, I see no reason not to fill them. This is an age distribution of Public Works employees. I did this here a couple months ago. If you look at that 57 in this area right here, number one, you have a cluster of people aged between 48 and maybe 62. But really what's important is look at that age 57. We've got a lot of people. What this in itself, it's not a big deal. But when those people at age 57 get to age 63 and 65, they're going to be retiring in a large group, and it's going to be difficult to fill that void. There's going to be a lot of people there at age 57 that have a lot of institutional knowledge, a lot of technical knowledge. So that is something that we need to be aware of and start thinking about. I've already been thinking about it, but to plan for. Second item is equipment fleet maintenance. Never ending. My calculations show that based on a 10 to 15 year replacement cycle, we need approximately $1 million a year to maintain our vehicle and equipment fleet. What we're doing is we're budgeting $650,000 a year. Throughout our 5-year CIP, we are budgeting $650,000 a year with the hope that $300,000 of that comes out of capital outlay and $350,000 of that comes out of Public Works Special Machinery Fund. To give you some ideas, in the last year, the commission was kind enough to award $200,000 to Public Works. In the year before, in 2019, $302,000. So the $300,000 capital outlay is not out of the question, but I also realize that you've got tons, you've got a lot of departments that have needs. So I understand we compete with the other departments for needs. So I'm not ignoring that. This is just something that a goal that I'm shooting for. Upkeep of the Sherwood system. We've talked about it many times. This is going to be an issue that dogs us for quite a number of years. Yes, we have a KDHE loan, and yes, we've recently been successful gaining that loan. It's a 20-year, 1.5%, $7 million, and that money is going to be very useful going forward to accomplish the goals that we want to finish the projects that we want to with that money. But just to give you some perspective now, the city of Topeka just completed a study, and they included the Sherwood system in their study. Black and Veatch completed a study on the plant operational controls. They believe the plant itself needs $1.36 million in operational control improvements. So that gives you a perspective that even though we're spending $7 million through this KDHE loan, and $1 million of that $7 million is allocated toward the treatment plant, you've got right there $1.4 million on just plant electronic controls, not equipment. So this is something the treatment plant, the Sherwood treatment plant, is going to be an ongoing issue that we're going to have to deal with from a monetary standpoint.
Curt, is that operational control? Is that people operating the?
No,
that's
that's the technology, the equipment. What's happened is there's equipment there running the plant. You know, electronics has a lifespan, a very short lifespan. You know, cars are becoming obsolete almost because of the electronic technology that goes into those vehicles. Same way with these plant controls. The equipment, the machinery may run for 20 years. The electronics may be obsolete in 7 years.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, Betty.
For the Sherwood sewer system, for the plant and all that, I know we contract with the city of Topeka for the operations of that plant.
Correct.
Now, the people in your office that work on this Sherwood system, do you allocate some of their time to that fund?
Well, that's a good question. It's a question I've asked. I said, do we charge our time to the Sherwood 2690 account when we spend time? Because I've been told that we never have.
And I think we should. I think we should look at that.
Yeah.
Because that is a separate district. It's a separate, you know, it's supposed to be funded completely by user fees.
Correct. Right.
And I do think we need to look at how much of your staff spend time on that, apart from the operations that we contract with the city of Topeka.
Okay, okay. Another issue that's going to be a challenge as we go down the road is the state, KDHE to be more precise. Through our permit, our stormwater pollution control permit, we're required to take water quality samples at 6 monitoring sites throughout Shawnee County. We've been doing that for quite some time. This last year, beginning in 2020 now, not only do we have to take water quality samples, that now we have to take stream flow samples. And so we've had to buy equipment and train an individual to determine the stream flow. Now, from an engineering standpoint and from our surveyor, the county surveyor, we've set the employee up so that it's easy for him to calculate this stream flow data with the equipment and some spreadsheets that we've created for him. But nevertheless, this is an example of KDHE requirements getting more stringent throughout time and putting more pressure on this individual to get this work done. We are required to do 2 samplings in the spring and 2 samplings in the fall for a total of 4 samplings. Again, 6 sites, 6 monitoring sites. And we sample when the rain event is such that we get more than a 1/4 inch through a 24-hour period.
Curt, can you tell me where this intersects with the Department of Emergency Management? Since they have the gauges that they get through FEMA and through KDHE?
And we could use those gauges if we were sampling at a site that had a gauge. Unfortunately, we're sampling at sites that don't have that stream gauge data, so we have to determine that ourselves. And so that is why we've bought this equipment. It wasn't extremely expensive, but it's why we've bought this equipment and we're taking the stream flow data, because unfortunately we were not able to take advantage of the stream gauging stations.
So is it different streams? Is it different points in the same stream? I mean,
It's right, you got it. It's different points in the same stream, because what KDHE is trying to accomplish here is they're trying to determine, okay, during a storm event, are we getting runoff, mostly from farm fields, because obviously in the county it's rural or semi-rural, are we getting runoff that is creating a substantial change in water quality? And that's what they're trying to determine. So they have us taking a sample upstream, and then a lot of times they'll have us take a sample downstream during the same storm event. And they're trying, again, to determine the change in water quality with a rain event. And they're also looking for discharges that are illegal, something like that.
this sounds like the same thing that the Conservation District does with their RAPs. So, I mean, is there any way that we could maybe share responsibility with like the Conservation District in what they do with their gauge? I mean, because they're doing the same,
Yeah, they
same
do
or
that.
similar actions instead of tying up our
Yeah,
time doing it.
Now, Curt, when you say water quality, are you looking at just sediment or bacteria or both?
I think both.
Okay.
Probably mostly sediment, sediment flows, bed load, things like that. But really both. What we do is, you might say, well, what's the big deal about taking a water quality sample? Well, we have to get that to an accredited lab within 24 hours. Where the sample is, we've wasted our time. So we take these samples. The nearest lab is in Kansas City, so we run those samples to Kansas City so that they can be accepted. And to answer your question, Kevin, I'll have to look with the Conservation District to see if we can piggyback. I suspect they're not probably taking samples at the same spots we are, but maybe the KDHE would accept these alternate sample locations.
So we have 3 different entities that are pulling samples from probably the same stream.
Maybe.
Possibly. Possibly.
Okay.
I know the Conservation District, they look at problem sites, like where somebody has a bunch of cattle
Yeah.
and it's running off, and how can they mitigate that? So it may not, I don't
Well,
know.
but I know they also look at the lake to see how much is going into the
Yeah.
lake from the surrounding homeowners, and so.
Well, there you have it.
Okay, department challenges continue. This is really the final slide for department challenges. Number of bidding contractors. When I've stood before you on an agenda item, I've talked about this before. We have a very limited number of bidding contractors. Back 20 years ago, when I first started for KDOT, 30 years ago, 40, maybe, 30 years ago, we had buku contractors throughout the state that were vying for projects. 2 things happened. KDOT over the years, obviously, has curtailed the number of projects for one reason or another. Number 2, in 2008, we had this housing bust that really impacted the number of contractors. A lot of them folded shop. Some of them left the state and concentrated in other states. And then well, I should say there's three things. It's very difficult for contractors now to hire young kids out of college to work construction. And these aren't, you know, these aren't menial tasks. These are running projects, learning how to administer a project. This takes some special skills and training. Contractors are having a hard time finding from the most basic labor position up to the project management positions. So you combine all three of those things, and guess what? We have a very limited number of contractors that bid on our projects, especially our road projects. I've talked to Betty about this before. She said, well, how do you know Bettis is going to get that job? Well, through experience and history, we know that Bettis is really, there's two contractors, Bettis and Hams. Hams has not been a viable bidder over the last 2 or 3 years on Shawnee County projects. Now, fortunately, Bettis, I think, has been pretty fair with us, and we're getting decent prices, but I just want to alert you, the less competition you have, the higher your bid prices are going to be. Material prices, you've asked me about this, Kevin, the other day. You asked about this, I think, on this limestone rock for Monmouth Township. Yeah. And I've got some graphs here that we might find interesting. There's 3 pages of material prices. It might be a little hard to see, but the red line is lightweight aggregate, and you see the trend is going up. The green line is asphalt, and we saw a big increase last year, but it's somewhat stabilized. And the thing about the green line, if you look over to the right for year 2020, that was only 6,000 tons of material. All the previous years were at 16 to 20,000 tons. Obviously, as your quantity goes down, your prices go up. So the fact that we had a reduction in our asphalt price and we only went from 20,000 in 2019 to 6,000 tons in 2020, that's a pretty good indicator that we're still getting pretty good prices on asphalt. The blue line is glass beads for traffic line paint. We've seen pretty much a strong increase in price on glass beads. That's the light blue line at the bottom, and then the dark blue line at the top is de-icing salt, which is so critical to what we do in the winter, and we've seen pretty stable prices there and actually somewhat of a drop. Yes, Aaron?
On the glass beads for traffic line paint,
yes,
that's a pretty steep increase.
Yes, it is.
I know that there are alternatives with basically those stickers that have kind of the checkerboard pattern on them, and I mean, are those also going up, or do we need to start looking at alternatives?
Well, I suspect everything in the traffic business is going up, but I don't think there's really any viable substitution for the glass beads, because what that does is that drops into the paint and becomes part of the striping. It's very durable. We run plows across our paved roads throughout winter, and snow plows are notoriously hard on anything above the surface of the pavement. And I think these items that you're talking about, Aaron, they would not survive snow plows very well. Okay. So glass beads, I think, are our only viable option there. Yes, you're right. You're seeing a substantial increase in glass beads. But what it's getting back to, it's what I've talked about a few minutes ago. We only get 2 bidders on glass beads. We try our best to get the word out, but Shawnee County may not need enough product to really pique the interest of a lot of maybe companies or larger companies. And then, oh, I'm sorry, Betty.
No, I'm thinking off the top of my head here, but if we don't have the quantity, is there someone else we could partner up with? We
could look into that. We could maybe partner with Douglas County, Osage, Jefferson, Jackson County. That's always a potential thing we could do. And that's actually a pretty good idea to see if we could piggyback or partner with it to increase that quantity.
Yeah. Then the other question was on the asphalt. I thought because of the oil prices, asphalt would have gone down more.
Even more. Remember, Betty, it's very important. The timing is important. When I came before the commission asking to purchase asphalt in 2020, that was in early March before the COVID thing really hit. So the asphalt prices were probably relatively high then, and they have come down significantly since then. But that's just the luck of the draw. Whoever knew that something like this COVID thing would have such an impact on us? Okay, page 2. The light green is crushed limestone. That's what we use in Monmouth Township for their chip seals. We've seen a steady, very slight increase. Kevin, you asked me when I came before you here last week or the week before what kind of price increase we had. I said it was around 20 cents. I was a little bit wrong. It was 30 cents.
Yep. But not like the glass beads.
No. And then at the bottom of the page is sand. Sand is another important commodity that we use during the winter. And for a long time, we had kind of a contract with a company that provided us with sand, but that contract expired. They no longer wish to participate, so we sent out for bids, and we paid quite a bit more this year. I'm going to have to possibly look into some alternatives when we come up for winter 2020-2021. Takes me to the third page, so the last page of material prices. The red at the top is milling and sweeping. This is something that we're going to talk about a little more because we have some projects coming up where we have contract milling and sweeping. And you notice that last year it took a really big hike in price and then dropped back substantially this year. Well, again, it's all about quantity. Last year, we only needed 13,100 square yards of milling and sweeping. This year, we asked for 55,200 square yards. So we have a substantial increase in quantity this year. Anything that is impacted by mobilization, where you have to bring equipment to a job site, mobilization is a significant cost to a product. So here is an example where we got a significant quantity, and so we got a much better price. Now, last year, if we wouldn't have had such a small quantity, I think our numbers would have been where that little cursor is. I think we'd have been down in here about the $3 per square yard instead of way up at $3.90, if our quantities would have been comparable between 2018 and 2020. The blue and the purple and the lime colored, those are oils. One we use for chip seal, one we use for spray patching. I say the trend is up a little bit, but it's not substantial, and we did get a slight decrease this year. And then the last one, the blue at the bottom is calcium chloride, and you probably say, well, what do we use that for? We use that for dust control. And it's been pretty stable. We've paid basically an extra 2 cents a gallon consistently from year to year, an extra 2 cents.
Curt,
Okay.
I occasionally get asked on the calcium chloride.
Yeah.
A lot of farmers or people out in the rural areas, as we have more urbanization, the question comes up with the county buying the calcium chloride for the townships or making it available to the townships. Do we engage in that conversation very much?
When we bid for, one of the criteria is, will you allow this bid price to be used for other entities in the county? And so we are hopeful that the bidding, the vendors are allowing that price to be used by other entities, a lot of townships. Generally, they don't, though.
That calcium chloride is a pretty controversial because of you have runoff, you have it going out into the streams, you also have it coming up onto vehicles and causing damage to vehicles.
That's why you have to use it at the right time. It's important that you apply that at the right time. But yes, when something is on the road, there's no guarantee that it won't end up on somebody's car. But that's the price you pay for the benefit of using that product. And it's just a balance. And we hope that when we use it, that we're using it at the right time. Where we regularly use it is on that 1 mile section in extreme southeast Shawnee County that's on the county system that's gravel. It's the only gravel road on the county system.
Do you have the townships looking to oil a lot of their gravel roads or put down other applicants?
I don't require it, and because, I'll tell you why. Because I have heard and I've seen presentations where there was a trend in the past, recent past, where counties were starting to place oil. They were turning their gravel roads into kind of a semi-paved road, and then funds dried up and they had to turn those back into gravel roads. I hate to see townships commit to paving and then not being able to maintain those roads. So I really leave that up to the county. If they have questions, of course, I'm always available to provide guidance, but I haven't really been pushing it because I think they have a better idea of what their goals are for the future than I do.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay.
Okay, and then the last department challenge is our federal funds exchange program. I've talked about it before. I don't like the fact that we've lost almost $450,000 since 2016. If you look at 2016, the red line, we were up around $1.2 million. The red line is that 90-10 exchange. This is the funds that are offered, but when we exchange those funds, we only get 90%. And what's the benefit of that 90%? No strings attached. It's worth 90 cents. Trust me. Even in 2018, even in 2018, where we had a 75% exchange rate, we still took advantage of it. We're seeing this on our signal project with KDOT. There is so much red tape that this is a heck of a deal. My only complaint with it is obviously, if you look at the trend here, 1.2 million in 2016, maybe 750,000 in 2020, a difference of $450,000. $450,000, that's the money that we've lost in 4 years. We could almost build a bridge for $450,000. This is why I'm so concerned about these federal fund exchange dollars. If someone asks me what's going to happen next year, I don't know. I don't know because the federal government has a new highway program, but COVID has wrecked many economies, so I don't know if you balance those two, I don't know what the impact's going to be next year. Could we end up continuing with this trend, this downward trend, or will we see an uptick? I have no idea. But at this point, I have to assume that the trend is going to continue. So that is the last of my challenges. Now for successes. Active road projects. These projects aren't done. So how can I call that a success? Well, the fact that we're to this point is a success. So that's why I've added them. Southeast 29th Street, KTA to Croco, 2-year project. We're in the 2nd year, everything. I would guess that the contractor is 1 week behind. By contract, they have to be done by November 23rd. I see nothing that really concerns me at this time as far as project completion or total project cost. Gary Ormsby Drive. We finished that in August of 2019. Since it was after July of last year, I'm including that as a success. Last year at July, I was giving this presentation. We finished it in August again, and it was so timely. I didn't know Walmart was going to bring in the distribution center. That road should be in good shape for a long time. I'm going to talk about it some more later on, but we need to probably think about doing the same thing to the eastern leg of Gary Ormsby Drive. Southeast 45th Street. We're moving along on Southeast 45th. All right-of-ways been purchased. We're in the middle of preparing for utility relocation, including a City of Topeka water line. I don't see any issues there. We will let that project early next year. That will be a 1-year project, and I'm telling you that contractor's going to really have to hump because there's 2 bridges on that project and a roundabout. Active signal project, South Topeka Boulevard at the 57th University in Gary Ormsby. Everything's going great there because of nothing that the county did. State moved that letting from September to October. That is absolutely no impact to us because we knew much of that work would take place in 2021. Those poles have to be fabricated, and there is a substantial lead time on the fabrication of those structures, pole structures. So everything looks good on that project. Again, that's an October letting. Active bridge and culvert projects. Morrell Road is under construction. It was let in April. We anticipate completion by contract at the end of July 31st to be precise. That was, whoops, that's not what I wanted to look at. That was a 102 calendar day project. Southeast 69th, a tributary to Lynn Creek, that's near Pollen Road. That was started work in on June 22nd. We expect that to complete on or before October 16th, and that is a 116-day calendar job. Northwest 39th, Northwest Green Hills Road, we've combined those two structures into one project, and we expect a letting here in July and August and substantial completions before the end of the year. It's a tight schedule, 100 calendar days, 2 bridge-size box culverts, but we still think at this point we can get that work done before the end of the year. Wilson and Glick Road, those are going to be let in January of next year. Work will start in February or March. Work will complete in June or July, and those are 116 to 130 day calendar jobs, or calendar day jobs. And the reason I bring that up is because that's a question you guys have asked me in the past. How long will these projects take place? And then Southeast Laurel Road over Tecumseh Creek, we've started to do some work. That's a 2022 bridge project. The reason we're getting started early on that is because we're not certain if we want to replace that bridge or we would like to remove it. I've already talked to Kevin about this project. We're in the process of talking to the local landowners. We've gotten some responses back. They're varied. There's some issues on that road that favors removal, no replacement, and there's some issues on that road that favors bridge replacement. So as we go forward and get more data, we will definitely keep the commission informed. Sherwood Wastewater Treatment System success is, hey, we got that KDHE loan. It took us 7 months to do it, but we got it. The commission approved it on April 27th. We're in the middle of a design on both the Teacup project, the phase 1 design build contract. We're in the middle of that. We're anticipating the work will start on that late this year. And we're in a design contract for the 6 pump stations and the collection system. The only thing that is not under contract at this time is the $1 million money that is to go toward the treatment plant. Something that you're going to be hearing from me about in the coming months is we need to establish 2021 to 2030 connection fees. The existing resolution expires at the end of the year. I have prepared a resolution. It's been approved by our county councilor. I have a fee schedule in place that I've worked with Betty on for an inflation rate. The only thing I'm working on at this time, I'm not personally working on it, but staff in the office, are maps, because depending on where the connection takes place, there are certain fees that are unique to certain areas of the Sherwood treatment system. So you'll be hearing more about that. I don't think it's a real controversial thing. I'm continuing what's already been established in the past. I'm just continuing, how do I want to say it? I'm just continuing what's been done in the past. I am increasing our Public Works review fees because they've been $45 since 2004, and I think it's time to up those fees to bring them more in line with our actual expenses. But this is a success. We finally got this KDHE loan, $7 million. We can really apply it to some improvements to the Sherwood treatment system, and I think we have ample revenue in the 269 account to pay for the loan repayments when they start in 2022, I think. Wasn't that, Betty? Yeah, I think that was right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Successes, major maintenance. We continue to do chip seal work throughout District 4. When I started here, one thing I've asked Jerry King, our road and bridge superintendent, rather than driving back and forth throughout the county doing one project in the northeast part of the county, one project in the southwest, I said, let's concentrate on one district, try to work our chip seals in that district, and in the following year move to another district. And it's been very beneficial so far because we've been able to concentrate our equipment in that one area, and it's minimized the travel across the county from one project site to another. We continue to do the limestone chip seals for Monmouth Township. That's no small feat in itself. That's a significant amount of mileage in Monmouth Township. And then probably our most major type of maintenance that's performed in-house are 2-inch, these hot mill. We mill the pavement 2 inches, and then we put 2 inches of new asphalt in. The mill and sweeping is by contract again, Bettis, and then we place the new asphalt. We're on Southeast Croco Road from 21st to 29th. That was done by contract. That was a change order on our Southeast 29th Street project. That's done. That was a contract project. Our in-house work that we've done, completed, is Southwest Wanamaker from 85th to 77th. We were just getting tons of complaints about these little shallow potholes that we had on Wanamaker between 85th and 77. We've taken care of that. We've got that overlay in place. And you're going to be hearing more about this in in the coming weeks, but we're on Southeast 45th between Stubbs Road and the county line. We planned to do a mill and inlay beginning the last week in July. We still want to do Southwest 57th between Burlingame and the city limits. We want to do Southwest Urish Road between Huntoon and 10th Street. And we don't have those planned at this time, but we definitely want to get those done before the asphalt plants close in November. And then something I've talked to Betty about, we've got another project that I'd like to do with a contract. It's over 1,800 feet of 5-lane roadway on Southwest Wanamaker. It's in rough shape. It's in comparable condition to what Croco Road was. And Betty and I, when she gets a chance, we're trying to work on a way to get that funded. From my standpoint, it might be hard to justify Southeast 29th again because they're in two remotely opposite ends of the county. We got Morrell Road that's kind of centrally located, Betty. I don't know if we could do that, but it would be nice if we could just change order that work in. We've already got a price from Bettis. It's competitive. We're not going to let it and get a better price, I'm convinced. Again, Bettis is the key. They do 80% of our work in the county. We've got a price. They're going to honor that price through the end of July, so I'm hopeful we can get that project done. I have the money for it. Yes, Betty?
And as I understand it, the reason you're wanting to move ahead on these is because the price is so low right now.
Yes.
Because of the oil prices, yeah. It is lower than you anticipate if we wait until our normal schedule.
Yeah, COVID would imply that maybe you ought to wait on these because, again, we don't know what your financial situation might be, but the oil prices are so low that if I can get this done now, we can, long term, we can save money. So I'm hoping that we can get these projects in now at this time. Yeah, Aaron?
That Wanamaker project, is that kind of between like 41st and
It's between, if I remember, I'm sorry to interrupt, it's between like 52nd and, the South City limits. It's, this is just, if you drive Southwest Wanamaker, the 5-lane section, you will see it. It sticks out like a sore thumb. You can see it from the aerials. It's really a bad section.
It's right up by the high school, though.
Yes, yes. And I'd really like to get that done, and it's just a matter of, because if we have to let this, that takes a lot of time, just by statute. So we'd really like to get this done through some means or mechanism that will expedite the process.
Sir,
yes, sir.
I appreciate fully that you're looking at that project, but I know that the next question I'm going to get asked from my constituents is, if you're doing that spot by Wanamaker, what's your status on around Seaman and that school and the Topeka Boulevard? And I know that they're completely opposite ends of the county, and one wouldn't think the other's connected, but I just know that I'm going to get asked from North Topeka, it seems like you're doing a lot for the Washburn Rural, but meanwhile, we've got traffic backed up 3 miles around the school, the new school district. And I know that we had left it with the school district to do the traffic study, and they should have done the impact study before they even did the construction, but they didn't for whatever reason. And so where do we stand on that?
Okay, that's a good question. And I would say that we're being fair. We're using our money throughout the county because concerning the Seaman High School, what I did was I secured KDOT funds.
And maybe the Seaman, is it the new middle school?
Yes.
I'm sorry,
I said high school, the middle school complex, you're right, and the grade school and middle school complex. I have secured funds from KDOT to do a traffic impact study. So that was no cost to the school, the USD, what is it? I can't remember.
345.
Yeah, 345, that's right. So there was no cost. That traffic study was done, no cost to the school district. It's complete. The report is in, it's finalized. It has been submitted to the school district, the administrator, the head administrator, and it's really up to them what they want to do now, because I have pledged county funds, if they wish to improve Topeka Boulevard, I have pledged county funds to design the improvement.
Now, when we did Washburn Rural's improvement, we had, Washburn Rural had money set aside for the expansion. I mean, we were the administrators. And, you know, we designed it and administrated it, but it was their funds to improve the roadway.
Right.
Would we treat Seaman in the exact same?
Because the work is different. The work that has to take place up on Topeka Boulevard will be much more substantial than the work that took place out in front of Washburn Rural High School. The work that took place out on Washburn Rural High School was work that our maintenance forces could accomplish. The work that has to take place on Topeka Boulevard is beyond the scope of what public works staff can accomplish. It's going to be more like a regular project where you improve the roadway. You provide dedicated left turn lanes. You're going to get into a water line on the east side of Topeka Boulevard. It's going to be a project that's much more complex than what was done in the southwest part of the county. And I think we've been very generous, because if this would have been done right, Seaman would have been on the hook to make these improvements when the TIA should have been done when they brought all these people in to one area. And it didn't happen, but that does not relieve them, in my mind, of the responsibility. They've asked me, well, isn't your job to maintain Topeka Boulevard? Yes. And as the growth increases up there, it is Shawnee County's responsibility to improve Topeka Boulevard. But this problem is not created by a number of people in the community. It's created by one entity that brought all of these students together.
And again, that probably should have been done by them at the time of construction.
Absolutely. It should have been part of their bond program. So I feel like we have treated Seaman well. I have a good relationship with the school district, yes, superintendent, and they seem pleased, and I said, don't shy away. If you want to do some improvements to Topeka Boulevard, we will be there to assist you. Now, the last I heard from him, he thought most of the problems could be handled with the on-site portion of the TIA, the portion that takes place on their property.
Okay.
Okay? Budget highlights. Now, I'm sorry, we're finally there. Really, what it comes to is our labor costs are down this year. Betty, you might be able to help me, but I really think a lot of that is due to the retirement of our former deputy director. But it's offset to some degree because now we're not sharing as many positions with solid waste. At one time, we had my position, salary was shared with solid waste. The deputy director's position was shared by solid waste. We had both a fleet supervisor and assistant fleet supervisor position that was shared by solid waste. Right now, we're down to the assistant fleet supervisor position is shared. So our total labor costs are down. In the administrative section, they're down by $40,000, but non-labor is up by $154,000. And this is really the essence of what I'm asking for in this budget presentation. I'm asking for $50,000 increase in my budget to counter the loss of federal matching funds. I talked about it a little bit ago, and in the 4 years since 2016 to 2020, we've lost $450,000. I'd like to start to establish an increase every year for a while to get some of that money back so we can maintain our buying power for projects. And so the only increase in this year's budget over last year is that $50,000 increase in federal matching funds. It's been $650,000 for a long, long time. It says there 2004. I would like to increase it this year to $700,000. Another change, but not an increase, is working with Betty when I came to the county here approximately 18 months ago. She said, we need to start budgeting for what we transfer to our special highway, special bridge, and special machinery. I've done that, and this year I increased that from $1.15 million to $1.25 million. That's just moving money around, does not result in a net increase to the budget. Yes, Betty?
I just thought maybe I could explain it a little
Yeah.
bit to, especially to Commissioner Mays.
Yeah.
By statute, anything that they have left in their budget at the end of the year can be transferred to these special funds for road projects, bridge projects, that kind of thing. In the past, what had been done was they would kind of
Fudge the numbers.
well, no, I don't think so.
No.
They just depended on a large amount to be remaining at the end of the year to be transferred. So they were not really budgeting everything in their, it was included in their budget request number, but it really wasn't a number that they are shooting towards transferring at the end of the year. I wanted it to really be a number that they were working towards. It was really added into all sorts of other places on the budget. And I said, let's really budget it for the way you want to see it. And so the 1.15 million was what he had budgeted, that was his anticipated transfer at the end of the year. It's, as long as I've been here, it's been at least, it's been around $1 million each year. So, slightly over that some years. So that's kind of what that change was. It was kind of, let's really budget it for what we want to do with the money.
And last year was the first year, like Betty said.
Yeah.
Well, with time, I'm getting more experience, and I think 1.15 from last year was a little conservative, so I thought, well, I think we can easily attain 1.25 million, so I've increased it. But not at the expense of the total budget. I've just moved money around. Now I know a question is going to come up. Well, what's the difference between the $650,000 and what you transfer? If you don't spend the money now, you can spend it next year. Well, that's the point of having the two fund accounts. The 650 or the 700, I hope, is something January 1. We can immediately transfer that money to a project. Whereas the money that's transferred, the unobligated funds that are transferred, I can't use that money till the following year. So that's why it's important to have some money up front that I can use and some money that I'm rewarded with for not spending that money that I can use on projects. So, anything you want to add, Betty?
No.
Okay. And this takes us through the different funding accounts. Basically, you see some negatives and a positive, and really what's important is when we get down to look at my whole budget, my labor is reduced by $141,000. Again, I've asked for an additional $50,000 to counter the federal matching funds. So the net budget request compared to 2020 is a minus $91,000. And if we just look at non-salary items, and the $91,000 is salary and non-salary items, if we look at the non-salary items, the plus $50,000 represents a 1.14 increase over 2020. Again, that's not total budget, that's non-salary, but it also represents a minus 0.33% decrease from 2017. So I know we're in an unknown financial situation. We don't want layoffs. I understand we have to be conservative, but I'm hoping that you strongly consider allowing me $50,000 to counteract a loss of $450,000 over the last 4 years. Just to give you an idea, this is mostly for Aaron's benefit. We have a number of funding sources. We have the 2017 to 2031 half-cent countywide sales tax. And in a sense, we have after we take out for the Willard Bridge repayments to KDOT, we have $1.317 million every year to use on bridges. And then late in the sales tax program, we have 2 dedicated projects. We have Northwest 46 from Button to Rochester, $9.3 million, and Northwest Rochester Road from US 24 to Northwest 50th. And that is a $13.7 million project. And I'm telling you right now, that is going to be one heck of a project. There's hardly any right-of-way. Those houses are close in. There's a lot of driveways. That is going to be a real interesting project.
When you're doing that Northwest Rochester Road one, are we gonna have, and I know it's tight, but is there any way that we would have any room for paths, trail, sidewalk? And again, I know there's a lot of technical.
We will do our best.
But I mean, I know that that's a total of, 22 to almost $23 million project when we get to it. But I just know that that's a big request up north, is having any sort of amenities, walking trails, biking trails. But I also recognize there's not a lot of room.
Yeah, we will always do what we can because we're obligated somewhat to comply with complete streets. And I've talked about it before. Public Works isn't just about road transportation, it's about transportation by foot, by bicycle. So anything we can do to better that, we will consider. Obviously, this project's going to be unique because of the tight right-of-way, but we will be looking into those kind of amenities also. But the project cost, I'm guessing that we're going to have to do that project in 3 years. And it's going to be a very, very interesting project. It's probably a project that will take me to the end of my time here at the county. Willard Bridge project residual. We could not have built. We might still be saving money for Southeast 29th if it wasn't for that Willard Bridge project residual, $2.7 million. You have to keep that in perspective, everyone. That was a significant contribution to the Southeast 29th Street project. We cannot count on that money being available again. Federal fund exchange dollars, again, it was $730,000 in 2020. That was after the 90-10. Again, I've talked about it. I don't know if that's going to continue to go down or maybe rebound somewhat. And then we use our special bridge, special road, and special machinery fund. Again, that's the funds that are transferred from the prior fiscal year. We use those to build bridges and culverts, and we use that on our road projects whenever the funds allow us to do so. So that is gives you a good primer on where we fund our projects. Okay, CIP submissions. We got 41 total submissions this year, 4 road projects, no changes from last year, same 4 road projects. 1 traffic signal project that was a change in scope. If you remember, the one on South Topeka Boulevard started out as a county project at 1 location. That was at University Boulevard. KDOT is now paying 90% of that project cost, but instead of improving at 1 location on Topeka Boulevard, we're improving the signals at 3 locations, not only on Topeka Boulevard, but on the side streets. 12 bridge projects. 1 is under construction, 3 were removed from last year, and 3 were added. So we've got 12 bridge projects that we've submitted this year, 9 culvert projects that involve 12 structures. It's the same 12 structures from last year. Sherwood, we didn't have the Sherwood replacement projects in there last year because we didn't have the KDHE loan. We now have the KDHE loan. They'll be funded by user fees and the 5 replacement and rehabilitation projects. And then we have equipment submittals. And we have 10 items there. The 10 items are 10 unique pieces of equipment, and they encompass multiple years. But again, as I've told you before, that averages $650,000 a year. Culvert replacements, the total 41 submittals of the culvert replacements, the 9 culvert projects, that amounts to $7.24 million over the 5-year CIP. Again, the primary funding source is special bridge, and culverts have a 50-year useful life. Bridge replacements, we've got 12 bridge replacement projects. They total $11.2 million. The primary funding source is the sales tax program, 75-year useful life. But in reality, we're building bridges now that I think will be here 100 years from now. 8 of those bridges are structurally deficient. They can't carry federal legal loads. 7 bridges are functionally obsolete. That means they're either narrow, have weird approach geometrics, et cetera, et cetera. And then road projects, we have multiple funding sources on those. Wherever we can get funds, we use them because those are such big outlays. 25 to 30-year useful life. Those are the 4 projects. We want to finish Southeast 45th Street out to Croco Road. Obviously, the Northwest 46th Street project is a 1/2 cent sales tax project. Not included in those is projects that I want to do that I want to somehow fit in monetarily into our program. Roundabout at Southwest 29th and Auburn Road. Right now there's a flashing signal. It's Auburn Road is through traffic. This 29th Street has a stop sign. I'd like to put a roundabout in there. I think a roundabout would work wonderfully at that location. That's all part of starting to think about Auburn Road and working south on Auburn Road. And then I talked about it earlier, Gary Ormsby Drive from Innovation Parkway to US 75. I think at some point with all the truck traffic we're going to have to do similar to what we did from US 75 to Innovation Parkway. And I say Innovation Parkway to US 75, that is an error. It should be Innovation Parkway to Topeka Boulevard, old US 75. And then we've got a traffic signal project. Our part of that is approximately $95,000. Again, that's 90-10 funded. 30-year useful life on signals. Equipment, again, I talked about it. $650,000 nominally a year. I'd like to see $300,000 of that come out of capital outlay and the remainder come out of special machinery. And that's got, usually that equipment has a 10 to 15-year replacement cycle. With that, I'll take your questions. I've pretty much, I think, used up most of my 1 hour.
Yeah.
Go back one slide, please.
Okay.
To the, so looking at this, I mean, I would think that the Gary Ormsby Drive would be a higher priority than any of those 45th Street projects.
You say that, but Gary Ormsby Drive right now doesn't need an action. I'm just anticipating that it's going to need an action. 45th Street is an important connection between Douglas County and Topeka. And I think that connection, if you think about the Big Springs Quarry there at the Douglas-Shawnee County line, 45th Street needs to be improved. We need to continue to work on that. And plus, as we develop Lake Shawnee and it becomes a more focused area where people congregate in non-COVID times, 45th Street is going to continue to be important. So I think 45th Street is it's a priority that I want to finish and get. Now what I might do, I get this section done from West Edge to East Edge Road done in next year. I might do another short segment. Then I might move somewhere else before I do the final segment of 45th. But I want to get 45th Street done. It carries a lot of traffic, and I think improvements are important on 45th Street.
Well, I don't doubt that it does. I just think, you know, with the new Walmart facility going in and the possibility of Project Urban, if we were to get that, I mean, the truck traffic's going to be
Understood.
And once those places get opened up, I mean, it's not going to be it's not going to be very easy to interrupt their business for that.
Well, what we can do is, I think Gary Ormsby is wide enough in that area. We can accomplish that under traffic. So I think there's some options for us. And again, I'm not saying it needs any action right now. I'm just anticipating the need for an action in the future.
Okay.
Anything else?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Over on 2nd Street, which I believe is the county's responsibility and not the Tecumseh Township, right there by Fujimura and the fire in the former power plant. I'm seeing a lot more wear on that road as the trucks are coming and going from the abatement of the power plant. Where does 2nd Street factor into our long-range plans?
I have to check,
Is
but
that
I
one-
think-
is that a- is
I
that
think that's a
Gunsel's
township
Okay.
maintained
So I
road.
know that we did all the culverts and we did all the work on
Mm.
Second Street.
Because again, even though the road may be the responsibility of the township, culverts of a certain size and bridges are the county's responsibility.
Right. You might look into that if
Okay.
you have.
How about signage? Are we in good shape?
Yeah, I think we are, for the most part. I went south on Auburn Road. One things I can do safely is I can drive my car. So this Saturday, I went south on Auburn Road and looked at kind of the conditions and things. It's a common way for me to enjoy myself and get out and see if there's any issues. I noticed when I was coming back north on Auburn Road, there were 3 bus stop ahead signs that need to be replaced. I'll email the road and bridge superintendent and he'll get it taken care of. But overall, our signing is in good condition in the county.
I've done a little more research on that problem at Rossville at the north end of
Yeah.
town,
Uh-huh.
where it's kind of a yours, mine, and ours kind of thing. For those, we have a bridge there, and there's some wing walls off this bridge, and one of the wing walls is falling. Well, part of it's already in the ditch,
Yeah.
but there's some question of whose wing wall it is, whether it belongs to the drainage district or the city of Rossville even.
Or the township.
Or the town, we don't know. And, but anyway, that doesn't solve the problem, but we feel like we can get a grant to replace that, but we still can't get anybody to own up to who owns that wall. But we're sure it's not ours from the bridge, and
Yeah.
I think Tom was
Yeah.
decided it
Yeah, I've
wasn't.
went and looked at it, and the wall was definitely not included in the original construction.
Yeah,
Of
it
the
looked like
bridge
they,
in
looked like they
1941.
cabbaged on the top of our
Yeah.
wall even.
Yeah.
And-
Yeah.
And, but,
Now, I
well,
got one bonus slide. Hey, it's good.
Okay.
I got a bonus slide here, and this is a kind of a graph of what each of the townships spent on their roads last year. And I thought it was very interesting. And it may be hard to see, but Topeka Township, with their 15 miles of county maintain, or township maintained road, they spent an average of over $16,000 per center line mile. Soldier Township was second, and you could expect Soldier Township to be second. Highly suburbanized, they have a lot. In fact, I don't think Soldier Township has a gravel road. I think they may have paved their last segment of gravel road here recently. Then Monmouth Township, we maintain Monmouth Township's roads, and they spent the 3rd highest amount of money on their roads in 2019. And the trend continues on down to Grove Township, who we also maintain their roads. But guess what? They spend the least amount of money on their roads of all the townships. So I think it is somewhat understandable that we assist Grove Township with the maintenance of their roads. Monmouth Township, though, I think spends enough money that personally, I think we should encourage at some point that they become an independent entity capable of maintaining their own roads. They have 2 dedicated positions at this time. They have a number of pieces of equipment, and that's just my observation. Again, I can't personally make that decision. I think the county commission can. I'm not suggesting that. I might be suggesting that we think about the transition back to Monmouth Township doing that maintenance. Yes.
Is part of that because they like limestone?
Part of that is because they get a heck of a deal, and they don't want to take over that responsibility themselves, because I think the county provides a tremendous service at a very reasonable cost, probably at a cost less than our actual costs.
No, I just meant their cost being higher, if it was because they.
No,
use
that's,
limestone.
the limestone is, when you look at the overall picture of road maintenance, that limestone is such a small component of it, I don't think that impacts. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I have. I hope it was informative and it didn't bore you too much. And, but I thank you for your time and your interest.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kurt.